is up there, right? Good morning and welcome to the North Richland Hills City Council Goals and Planning Work Session. It is 8:30 a.m. on Friday, July 12th, 2024, and I will reconvene the City Council Goals and Planning Work Session into order. A quorum of the City Council is present, and the meeting has been duly posted in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act of the Texas Government Code. One housekeeping thing, what I understand is Paulette told me that the posting of the video is going to be different than what it is normally because of the length. And so it'll go on YouTube and it will be on Granicus, but a link over or?
Oh, I don't think, will it be in Granicus on YouTube or just on the website?
It will be from the website, and there will be
Okay.
a link to the YouTube channel.
Okay,
Yeah.
perfect. Just so if anybody's looking for it, that's where it is.
Good. Are we
Floor's
ready?
yours. We
Good.
are so
Good
ready.
morning. All right, so here's the question. Did anyone wake up in the middle of the night, sit straight up in bed and said, man, there's something we just got to talk about first thing in the morning?
Do that every day.
All right, good. I didn't expect that, but I just always want to give that. So let's do a quick review of yesterday before we go on and talk about it. Just quick around the room. Best part of yesterday. By the way, I felt really, really good walking out of here yesterday, so congratulations. But I'm curious, best part of yesterday? Yes?
The overall discussion was really, really good. So I think everybody heard each other.
Please remember your microphones, but that's okay.
It's early.
We can't hear you.
Oh, okay. So I said overall discussion, it was very, very good. I think everybody heard each other, and it was very, very energetic.
Good.
Yeah, I thought the sorry, go ahead.
You sure?
Yeah.
Okay. Because I'm going to say the same thing you are. I think the overall cooperation, we really saw that when we were working on the mission statement. Everybody collaborating together and you're working in the same direction was really nice.
Good.
Well, I should have gone first, I guess. So. No, I thought the group worked really well together. I mean, obviously there's been, we've said before, new group and everything like that, and we're all on the same team and same goals.
Good. Anyone else? Who else?
Kind of the open mind that everybody had, and everybody contributed. Outside of just the council, other people contributed as well. So I thought it was good.
Good. Rick?
The overall positive attitude and talking, and then just kind of airing everything out, and just realize that we're all pretty much, a lot of us are on the same page.
Right. What do you think, Tito?
Of course, I apologize. I had to skip out.
Hit your mic.
Apologize. I had to skip out for a little bit, but excited to be here and enjoyed hearing the conversations and what y'all discussed while I was gone when I got caught up. So appreciate everybody's time and collaboration.
Good. Russ, how about you?
I thought it was good. Enjoyed the exchange of conversation, especially with the staff and with the other staff that's here. It's good to get to know them, and don't get to know them a lot, but at least, you can put a face with a name. And really what's impressive this morning is we have two here that actually come relaxed today without ties on. I thought, man, how impressive. These guys are getting comfortable with us now, so that's really good.
That's right.
But overall, it was a great day.
Blake's like my people. What do you think? What did you think yesterday, Blake?
I do think it was a really good discussion. Especially appreciate Paulette and just her ability to step up and really give us the opinion and kind of fight for things that she believes in. I appreciate that from all of the city leaders. My expectation for each of you is if you really believe we're saying something wrong or we're missing something, you need to step up. And if you don't do that, you're not doing your job. Right? So if you don't push back on us when you really believe it, that doesn't mean we're going to come to an agreement on something, but like in my personal business, that's the people I rely on the most are the ones who disagree with me the most. So anyway.
Good. Staff, what do you think? Paulette?
I thought it went really well. Again, I appreciated the open conversation that everybody was heard and listened to, and then the collaboration is good. I think it sets a great tone for as we're going into the budget time, because that's going to be important. I think respectfully disagreeing is important, and that was shown yesterday a lot. So I think it's been a good meeting so far.
Good.
So.
In other words, that's sort of the subtle, don't screw it up, right?
There you go.
Yeah, just make sure we heard the same thing, Russ. Any other staff want to jump in? I won't ask you to if you don't want to, but. Going once? Going twice?
Microphone.
All right, good. So let's review. Some just set themselves up. don't they?
Yeah.
You need a microphone?
It's BYOM.
Yeah, I can't speak for staff, but I think I'm, in some cases, speaking for staff, and that is, yesterday was really good for us to witness the harmony, the collaboration amongst you all. And so I think that was very helpful for us to see and helpful for us to work with you guys.
Good. You might just want to switch it off and hold it. You'll probably be speaking again. All right, just as a reminder, the mission still sits well, promote an exceptional quality of life for our community by being resident-focused, fiscally responsible, and business-friendly. Now, the mayor mentioned yesterday Good to Great. And that was Jim Collins' second book.
Yes.
First book, which I kind of almost liked a little better personally. I like Good to Great, but I like Built
good.
to Last. Was called Built to Last.
It should have been the second book.
And there's something they talk about in Built to Last called a BHAG, which stands for, does anyone know, acronym? Big, Hairy, Audacious Goal. And that organizations that are built to last have a big, hairy, audacious goal. Now, we left yesterday with this notion of vision. We were going to kind of leave it at, city of choice to live, work, and play. Truthfully, was anybody like jumping up and down because of that vision? So what I did yesterday is I was thinking about this. I didn't think anybody was jumping up and down. I was thinking about this. Also was thinking about my buddy Joe Calloway. Joe Calloway and I have been friends for 35 years or so. Joe wrote a legendary book in the branding world called Becoming a Category of One, which is an excellent, it's a little older now, but the concepts are still the same. He said, you don't want to be, why try to compete in your own category? Just why try to compete in a category? Be a category of one. And the very first chapter in his book talks about the movie, Apollo 13. Let me remember, Tom Hanks. Right? And in the early part of that movie, they're sitting out there and they're in the backyard, and he's up there like this with his thumb up at the moon. Remember that scene? He's up there like that. And he says, it's amazing. We live in a world where we could put a person on the moon, and we just decided to go. Not because we had to, but we just decided to go. And Joe's first point in the book is that great businesses just decide to go, which is kind of this big, hairy thing. So I was thinking about vision. And then I was thinking about all the words that you talked about. And then Blake kept saying, want to be the best. And I kept thinking about this picture of how we would ideally like to look, feel, and act. It's hard to say in government that you want to be the best because that's a hard comparative, right? There's not an apple to apple. But if you look at synonyms for the best, the standard, the benchmark, what have we just decided to go? What's your reaction? By the way, the last piece is figure out where you want to go, right? The county, the state, the region, the United States. You know,
You still get to keep City of Choice logo?
no, that'll probably go, but you could if you want. It's a logo,
The
right?
standard.
We'll just change it to the standard.
Yeah.
By the way, that
It's
would
bold,
be
guys. That's bold.
that would be very bold to change your logo to NRH the standard. That is right. That's the BHAG. First off, what's your reaction? Forget it. We'll come to the qualifier, but what's your reaction to saying our vision is to be the standard in those things? That's who we want to be. That's our aspirational point out there.
Go ahead.
I like the idea. Standard sounds weird to me, but I like the direction of it.
Okay?
I know.
So if there's a different word, that would be okay, because it could be standard, it could be benchmark, it could be...
But I like the idea of like our aspiration is to be the best of the best of the best, sir.
By the way, here's the reason I started with standard rather than best. It's difficult for your neighbor. By the way, when you say we're going to be the standard, that's going to tick a few of your neighbors off too. I'm not sure that you care, but but to say we're going to be the best, it's easy for folks from a cooperation standpoint. I'm mindful of that. So if it's not standard, it could be the benchmark, it could be some other word that basically says, we're here. So I get it. What do you think, Ricky? What's your reaction to this?
I like it. I'm always searching for that top goal, especially people, the goal that people are like, that's too far up. So I think I'm all for us being the best of the best. There's a reason we all live here. We all could pick some other random state in another town. So I believe we're the best place to live in the United States. That's me.
Tito, what do you think?
I agree too. And I don't think we should be that concerned with what our neighbors feel about what our moniker is or our logo is. I mean, it maybe helps them step up too.
Good. Susie?
Microphone. Microphone.
I don't have a wearable mic. One of my things I keep going round on this is I keep going back to all the things I've learned in education and when we've developed these things and the visions and all. And standard, I keep going back to the standards that we have for kids and what we have to do to get there to meet those standards. And if we're at the top and that's the highest standard, it's like kind of what Tito said, other places we're going to want to aspire to be like us. So standard's a good word. I like the thought what you just said about we are the standard. I mean, it's kind of like, what's his name? The Rock. What's his first name again? I mean, he defined it. This is who I am. Bam. It's that being bold and brave out there. It doesn't have to be a big, long thing. It's like, this is who we are. We are the standard.
Or we aspire to be. I
we
go back
aspire.
to, I mentioned yesterday, Carl Sewell told me the best decision we ever made in our business was the decision to be the best, right? The most important decision, the decision to be the best. Made things more focused, more profitable, and more fun. Well, Carl will also tell you, we're not the best every day. There are days that we miss. But that's still the goal. So, we think about, we said, the key word to that is vision. That's who we aspire to be. Good. What do you think, Calvin?
I like it. I think it covers the four big rocks that we've been talking about for, last couple of days as well as the last 6 months. It's transparent, resident focused, fiscally responsible, and business. I mean, it hits everything that we should be focusing on.
Good. Blake?
As
Okay,
in
you,
Matt.
Matt?
As in Matt Blake.
Yeah, I'm going around.
You
and-
got Susie-itis on the names. I'm just kidding. I like the concept of it, and I don't like something about the way it's worded, and I cannot figure out what it is.
Okay, that's fair. Russ, what do you think?
Susie sort of hit it, but I think Tito's sort of correct. The word standard I don't get excited about. I do like your word benchmark. That's sort of, I think, raises the bar. I think the concept is excellent. And I do believe we have a great city, a lot of great people working for us, and I think this would be a good start for us to step up to Tarrant County and say, you know what, get behind us and learn how to do it.
Staff,
So,
what do you think?
As I told Randy up there, I said, Texas is all that matters anyway. So as your end word is in
Yeah,
Texas,
I was going
right?
to say, where do you want to
Yeah.
go to?
Yeah, it's the rest of the state's real irrelevant. But I like the word standard just because there is a nuance. I think it makes people think more. I mean, you know, I go down and think, well, I'm setting the standard versus, because there's always a new standard. When you say the best, it kind of kills the whole thing. A benchmark, yes, I am benchmarking against other people. Paulette said next to me, that's a boring word. But I use that word a lot, so obviously I'm boring. But but that's why I like standard. I mean, I think in those words of like pinnacle, but that's because of golf. But and then other words that surround that. But I think it's hard to get away from the word. For me, it's hard to get away from the word standard, just because it's always something that's there's always a new standard. You know, I mean, somebody sets a new standard. But I think the best part is it puts pressure on all of us to think in that manner.
What implies that gold standard, that's the top level.
Right,
So-
gold standard.
Yeah.
Right. Yep.
I agree, because like the word benchmark, that could be like different levels. So if like, well, we hit a benchmark, you could keep going. The standard kind of means like that's the top in my head. I like the word standard better too.
You asked what staff thinks, so I can speak for the staff, unlike Craig. I like the word standard because of really what Jack was saying, but it does make you think, and it's a different word, and just like it says in Good to Great, you don't always you can't achieve, like once you're there, you're setting a new standard. You're always seeking that next highest level. And for me, it's I've done many personality things over the years and leadership stuff. And one of a leadership coach I worked with told me, in your personality assessment, I don't even remember which one it was, but he said, one of your things is you want to be the best. And if you come into a group and it's not the best, you're going to make it the best. He's like, that's just how it comes across. I never thought about it that way, but I think that's why this vision statement resonates with me. So.
Good. By the way, you could add the qualifier. I'm not sure that it makes sense to have the gold standard because somebody else will go, well, we're the platinum standard, or we're the titanium standard, or no, it's just like the standard. If you look at American Airlines for years and years and years, you were an Advantage Gold, that was the big thing, and everybody was like, yeah, everybody's an Advantage Gold. So now we got to have Platinum, and then we have to have Platinum Pro, then we got to have Executive Platinum, and now we have Concierge, So you got to, but if you just say, this is the standard, period.
Well, I'm going to break in really quick. Okay, so I'm not saying this to be a little bit controversial.
Yeah, you are.
Okay. But, no, I think, I'm just being honest with you, okay? I think there is a perception or a stereotype that's been created in the minds of some of the general public when it comes to bureaucracy, right? When it comes to government. And, even in the military, we had a saying, it's not a good saying. It says, good enough for government work, right? What I think we're trying to do here is say, in North Richland Hills, nothing is good enough for government work. We will be the standard. We will be leading the charge. Complacency has no home in North Richland Hills. And so, since this is the vision, this is where we're aiming. It's not saying that's where we're at. It's not saying that's where we're going to be tomorrow or anything, but it's saying everybody who gets on board here is not going to be just your run-of-the-mill stereotype, right? We will be the best. We will keep pushing better and better and better every day. So I think that's what we're going for, right?
Right. By the way, with that in mind, you could say to set the standard, but I think it's maybe more powerful to be the standard. Now, like you mentioned, sort of the impression about bureaucratic. You go back and look at history, there was a time in the world when being a bureaucrat was a good thing. Now, if you go all the way back to municipal government, the idea of professional management to bring some bureaucracy to the government was, it's a result of, you go back to history, to Tammany Hall, Boss Tweed, and everybody said there's corruption, there's people doing whatever they want, there's no standard, there's people just all over. And so the idea of that is, we need some people, some professionals, some bureaucrats to sort of make this thing standard and professional. Some parts of the world, in Singapore and India and whatever, a government bureaucrat is a highly prized position because of that mentality. Now, over the years, like a lot of things, that good idea went from, we became so good at that we started to stifle things. Just like you said yesterday, Blake, right? We've become so good at this that it starts to stifle things. So it's that notion of continue without complacency. By the way, if you go back to all those companies in Search of Excellence and Good to Great in whatever book, why aren't they great any longer? They became complacent. So,
if I can really quick too, sorry, I know you got things to do. My experience with a certain city right now has been so miserable. It's like I tell people all the time, like I have a knot like the size of an apple on my head from banging my head against the wall from my interaction with the city staff. And I'm talking about the high-level city staff, the planning department, right, the city managers. Multiple emails going back and forth where they are providing inaccurate information, things that they should know in their job. City engineer telling me I can't have a batch plant because it's residential zoning. And I'm like, but we're under construction. Like, that's not what your zoning code says. They don't know their own zoning code. Or, and I ask them, hey, why can't you do a public improvement district? And their answer is, oh, we can't tell you about our secret conversations with our attorney. I'm like, these don't make sense. Like, they're not transparent. They're not accurate. I've emailed their mayor 12 times. No, sorry, more than that. Probably 15 times I've emailed their mayor in the past 3 months. Mayor doesn't even respond. Like, that's my interaction with another city, not this city, obviously. And it's like, I hate it. I hate it to the point where I just want to move on and not do business with them at all. And I hear the exact same thing from other people doing what I do. I got an email yesterday saying if they keep this up, nobody's going to want to do business with them. And that's what I'm petrified of becoming, which I know we're not, and we're nowhere near it. But we have to be the best. And so it attracts people. It attracts people to work here. It attracts developers to build amazing communities and businesses to bring wonderful jobs, entertainment, capital, and all that kind of stuff. So, yeah.
So if we move with this, now the next question is going to be, how will we know? And that's where you're going to come back to, I don't know that there's metrics out there. Paulette and I chatted a little bit about that. I don't know that there's metrics right now that everybody can point to. These are the 5 things that everybody agrees on today. But, I mean, council, if you want to say, this is where we want to go and we want to be able to prove it, then the staff can come back to you with saying, and we'll get to when we talk about measurements that you want, but then it starts to look at, okay, how do we know, right? How do we justify that? Because somebody's going to ask us. And then the next question is, you're exactly right, Blake. It starts to look at, this is the filter that we hire through. This is the filter that we set goals to. This is the filter that we, every decision gets filtered as, does it take us here? You like it? You need to sit on it for a day or two before you say, book it?
It's certainly a better focus than what our last vision is. I mean, because no one was excited after we finished the conversation. I think everybody was just started talking about it. I mean, that was the impression I got. It's like, fine, look, can we just move on? So I like this much better because it is something that you strive more towards, and you think of it this way within everything you're doing. And if you just put the standard instead of city of choice underneath, that puts pressure on you, and pressure's good.
Your old one?
While Randy's doing that, just to clarify on the logo, so really the logo that we use on most printed things is just the NRH or the Compass NRH. So the city of choice is pretty easy to change out. It's not, it's not going to be expensive or anything like that. So I don't want somebody to think it's going to be a lot of money to not use city of choice. It's not. So somebody.
So, Tito, one of the things they said, okay, the bullet points don't really matter as much, but that was the old one, except it had those 3 points in it.
And I like the, if we used it for marketing or anything, like it sounds cool, the city of choice to live, work, and play. So I'm sure there's still a home for that somewhere.
It's just most every other city uses it now too. So it's, yeah.
Dump it.
Well, I know visiting recently with the fire chief was at the Penning recently. He brought up several times when we talked about recruiting. And he told me about how many resumes they started with, where they ended up at, and even after that, major decrease. It was just a couple, 2 or 3 that got selected. So if you're talking about standards, the police department, fire department they're already in that mode where they're saying, there's 100 choices out here, but we only want 1 or 2. So I think for their departments, I think we can already see there's a standard been set. So this, in my opinion, already fits what they've already started doing there in their selection of who they want to represent them.
Just to add to that, it's the same, I would say, in most, all the departments, Public Works, everyone. That's why, yes, we need to fill the positions. At the same time, we're very conscious about not lowering our standards for who we allow to fill those positions. We have said, and we continue to say, we are very picky with who we allow to come into this organization.
Well, I wasn't saying that.
No, I know.
I get what you're saying.
Yeah, I
but,
just wanted everybody to know it's
those
like
are just
that.
2 that
Yeah.
that's really stand out to me. The other ones I haven't talked to. So, but I know. Well, I'll give you an example. The one's been working in my neighborhood for a month on the Public Works. They're excellent. They go to the door and tell people this is what we're doing today and this is why we're here. So I think they've already exhibited we're in that standard mode. So I think this fits what the city's trying to do right now with some of the departments already that I know about anyway.
And just on something that Paulette said, I think the standard starts above the employees and it goes to the city management team down to the directors all the way down. So it funnels down.
I am interested, directors, what's your reaction to this? Go ahead, Chief. May have to pry the microphone out of his hand, but.
Morning. Okay, yeah, I'm up. Well, first of all, I really applaud the work that y'all are doing on that, and I like what you've come up with on this. Now, I will tell you that you've got some directors back here that are probably going, standards. To be the standard, that's exactly what we all want to achieve. However, keep in mind, when I look at that and I look across and I compare from one police department to the next, being the standard is not inexpensive either. So just kind of know that up front, because there's a lot of different definitions that you can put for being the standard. And you're right, because when we talk about hiring police officers, we will not chintz on that. We will pass and we will run short, as opposed to bringing somebody on that we shouldn't bring on. And because I look at some of the other departments, I say, okay, that department just hired 7 people, and I'll talk to my hiring guy, and he'll say, yes, they hire anybody that walks through the door over there. And so that is one of the things that we, the police and the fire department, and I really think all the directors, are looking for the best of the best to bring on to begin with. But anyway, I would just like to say thank you for doing what you're doing, and I think you're going the right direction.
Any others? Direct. Go ahead, Chief. You should be on. Yeah.
All right. I would just echo what Chief Young said, and the only thing that I would add there would be that that's one of the messages that I give to our new recruits when we're hiring them. In our chief's interview, the last thing I tell them is we are the best of the best. And that's the standard we expect you to come into and fill. And that's not for everybody. And if it's not for you, now's your time to say, hey, I might ought to look somewhere else. But the expectation day one is be part of the best. And it's hard to sell to our people we're the best if we're not saying we're the best. That's probably the biggest message. Is I think that goes a long way in our department to say, hey, if you're gonna promote, you want to be the best, you got to believe you're the best. You got to work that way every day, and I feel like we do. So, but I do appreciate that mentality. I appreciate Councilman Mitchell pointing out those very things of recognizing the efforts that we're making to do that. So I appreciate it.
I'm curious, staff, what scares you about this? Anybody want to chime in? What scares you?
I would say it doesn't scare me. There's a competitive nature, I think, in our department heads that most people probably don't see on the regular basis. And so for me, it more comes down to that's just, that's one that leads, period. A standard is one that leads. And it's not necessarily a scare as much as it is an energizing, competitive nature that comes out, I think, in a lot of us, because we look at that and go, okay, that's just energizing me. You don't think I'm the best? Then let me show you that. You don't think we can do that? Then let me show you that. So I appreciate that direction. It's simple. It's clear. I can put our things behind it, meaning standard of this across every division. And I think that's important to have that clarity.
Anyone else? Good. We also started yesterday with the notion of goals, and you came up with 5 or 6 things. I spent some time yesterday and last night sort of articulating the things that we talked about. And as we walked through there, we initially wanted to go with 5. You're going to see 7 here. Let me walk you through them and explain why we can always back off of that. Fair enough? These are the 7. I'll let you read through them. These are not in order, by the way, so.
I do like you're including the residents' comment, the engaged residents. I think that's important in itself, just to be, if you're talking about a community, you're talking about residents, you're talking about people knowing who those neighbors are and what's going on, like we talked about one day. I think it's important you know who was there.
So the two that I added that you didn't talk about yesterday, one of them was the last one, strengthen safety, security, and infrastructure. And not that you weren't going to do that, it became one of those that, is it important for people to see that that's what one of our goals? So that's why that one was added in there. Does that make sense?
It does. Sorry.
Yeah.
That's the one actually that, yeah, we need to have that safety and security and infrastructure in there, but I guess that word strengthening, it makes it sound like now, hey, it's not a safe place to live, we're gonna get better, which I think that that's not the case. So it kind of gives that impression, at least to me anyway, reading that the first time.
I have the same concerns about become a great place to work, because it makes it sound like you don't want to work here right now. I don't think that's true.
I agree on the great place to work one, that needs to change. Strengthen, I kind of like it. Maybe it's just because of the alliteration there, but strengthen safety and security doesn't necessarily mean it's not bad, but like that's a focus. I'm not against changing it. I just kind of like the way it sounds.
Maybe instead of strengthen, you could say, just use the word strong safety, security, and infrastructure, or.
So one of the things that's different about the way these goals are written versus the way previous goals were written is there's something active in each one of them. And it goes back to the SMART goal concept, but it should drive action. People should go, here's what we're working on. So I understand that strengthen might not be a good word, but it could be sustained. It could be.
Well, I mean, I think a lot of people, not a lot, I'm not saying it's the majority, but I'm saying there's definitely a group of people within the city who believe we do need to strengthen safety and security. They hear more and more about crime entering in through Nextdoor or Facebook and all those things, and so, and then we've struggled with speeding recently. That got a lot of attention, right? And so I think it's okay to say a goal is to strengthen safety and security because you're kind of acknowledging there is room to improve. It's not a call out. It's just saying, yeah, we know there's room to improve and we're going to do it, and that's especially true on the infrastructure side. So.
Here's some synonyms. Build up is one that I like. Build up. There's a bug crawling on my face. Stop. Build up.
Okay, build up would be a good one. Does build up, when you say that, does it come back to, so we're just adding versus improving? So you could say improve safety, security.
Well, if we're gonna say improve, might as well stick with strengthen. Yeah. Yeah.
Or could we say like continuously improve? I guess it's the same thing as strengthen, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think we're getting too worried about perception or maybe our feelings and stuff. I don't know. What you just brought? I'm responding to you. No, I don't like strengthen above it though. Engage residents to strengthen connection. Maybe enhance. I don't know. These are just words.
Right.
The ideas.
So
are
enhance connection could be there. Because enhance on the above one, engage residents to enhance connection. Yeah, I could just say be a great place to work. Are you a great place to work right now? So allow me to push back for a minute. People want to work for great places to work. Good people follow good people. You agree? So, why aren't the superstars beating down the door to come here?
Yeah, I would, I guess, disagree that we've got some superstars here.
I know.
We got them, so.
By the way, I know we have superstars here, but I go back to, I don't know what the numbers is now, but I go back to Southwest Airlines. Back when that was a big thing, Southwest Airlines hired about 5,000 people a year. They had 50,000 applicants to start with every year. And out of 50,000, they got to 5,000 because people were beating down the door to want to work here. So, using that as a place, right? Let me ask the question. Are people beating down the door to want to work here? What do you think, Patrick? You see this every day.
Yeah, they are. You know, I think.
Here.
Okay.
Just speak into my shirt.
This is awkward, but we'll go with it.
It is awkward. Especially when you put your hand on my shoulder.
Yes, I think they are. I think, and they have been for quite some time. And you can look at the tenure in the room over the years with the directors that are here and the staff, the supervisors, and then the more recent hires. You know, numbers regarding open positions isn't getting high numbers isn't always an indicator of strength. So it's the experience that someone brings to the jobs here. It's the you know, it's so it's more than just numbers. And so, yeah, I would say that they are beating down the door, however, the way I would define it. And, you know, if you look at public safety, the numbers are coming back. And, you know, the chiefs just commented about how we're very selective. You know, one of the things that I think that we do well here, going back to the hiring process, is I think we have management and supervisors that are very picky, and they take that job of hiring as being very important. So to the point to where it's almost one of the most important decisions that they're going to make is who you bring into the organization. So, you know, examples, I could give a number of examples. The way that happens through panel interviews, through, you know, there's a series of interviews that even your maintenance workers have to go through before they're employed here. So we do take it serious. And I do think that we get very quality candidates. So, you know, I'd love to hear other input, but yeah, it doesn't mean that every position, there are still some difficult positions. I think when we go into the budget work session and the presentations that I'll make, you know, we still have some challenges in some areas. But you know, I think we're always seeking to improve and to get better.
And to Patrick's comments, I think one of the other things that I always appreciate about our city is that I think folks realize that there's opportunities for advancement here. That if you look around the room and several of our directors didn't start here as directors. They started out down on the line and worked their ways up. So I think even our city management team, I think people realize that in the community, in the area, that there's opportunities for advancement. You know.
But if I could also offer, I've been in local government for 20 years. I've been here for about 2.5. The personality of the city of North Richland Hills has also been a little bit introverted. We're a little bit humble. We probably don't see the numbers that some other cities see in terms of huge numbers of applications because we're not as braggadocious as some other places. We tend to be a little quieter in the marketplace. We tend not to have the huge splash. We're more like that small selective college, not like one of the huge ones that's always doing marketing and a lot of advertisement around themselves. If the direction of council, if the interest of council, if we're moving in a direction where we want to be a little bolder, we want to be a little louder, we want to be a little more assertive in our style, that's something we can pivot towards. But that hasn't necessarily been how we've operated in the market. And to some extent, that may impact who all's attracted to us from an applicant pool perspective. Doesn't mean that we don't get great people. Sometimes we don't get the same volume because we haven't exerted that kind of loud marketing sort of effort that some other places do.
Well, just to add to that too, so the market and the job market is what I'm specifically referring to, has a lot to do with the numbers we get for various positions and who's available in the market and qualified for whatever the positions are. So that has a lot to do with it. The other thing is, to Trudy's point, yeah, we're not real braggadocious. We also have high expectations for your work ethic. And so we've actually had people leave places like Public Works and Parks after starting because you're going to work hard if you work here at any level, not just Parks and Public Works. And we were kind of reflecting on the conversation yesterday, and one of the things that, and I think this is a good time to kind of bring it up, is that even our director level folks, how I describe it is they have to know how to operate at the top of the stairs and at the bottom of the stairs. So meaning they have to be able to know the big vision and understand that, and then they also have to be able to get down into the weeds, sometimes quite literally, and do some of the work. And so that's an expectation we have here. That is not an expectation that a lot of other cities have. So sometimes folks do know that is, if you're going to work here, you can't just be a director and sit up there and order people around. That's not what our directors do. They're in the weeds with their people, and that's the expectation. So sometimes that affects our numbers of applicants when we're talking about leadership positions. So
It's funny working at United Healthcare. If they have more of a name in Minneapolis than they do down here, and they require the hiring practices down here the same as it is in Minneapolis. And the arrogance is there in Minneapolis, but it's not down here because they're competing with some huge names in the DFW area. They're not up in Minneapolis. I mean, sure, there's Best Buy and there's some other, major brands that are up in the Minneapolis area. So they make the hurdles very difficult to get someone to be hired. But people desire up there to be hired at United Healthcare. And down here, it was killing our hiring practices, mainly because they wanted the same hurdles, and they went to Toyota. I mean, because we were up in North Dallas, and they went to State Farm, or they went to everybody that would say, we're not going to make you wait 30 days because you might be starving to death by then, to be hired. And we try to explain that over and over, and we end up outsourcing overseas. Right, a lot of them, because I said I can't do that here. You're not that brand here, and they didn't understand that. So it even makes it in different places where you create that mystique. Like there's a lot of people that don't want to go to work that won't interview for Southwest because of their interview process, right? Because they don't want it. They don't have the personality to go through that. But that in itself has already sent the message in the marketplace to go, I don't want by the way, you're going to have to go through this. You better be able to handle this, gang, interview that you're going to get. That's kind of tough for people. So I think kind of to the point of what we were talking about with the vision, instead of city of choice, the standard, I think that makes that arrogant comment that you have to live up to, that people that will be a little more braggadocious, if you will, to say, I want to go there, right? Because they're the standard, and it might raise that profile of us that might be not.
I think Trudy's comment is a really important one, that you've been historically very humble. When you read the TML magazines. They have these stories out all the time about these cities. And one of the things that I learned several years ago, I used to write for TML for a while. I wrote a leadership article for them for a couple of years on a regular basis. And one of the things that you learn is the people who show up all the time in their magazine might not be the best people who are doing it. They just have the best marketing team. And so there's a couple of cities that sort of show up used to show up on a regular basis. Haven't read the magazine in a long time, but they used to show up on a regular basis. And their communications team, I mean, how large is your communication team here?
He also does a lot of our now social media, especially when we're including video piece, so 3.
Right, yeah. They have 10 or 12.
Yeah.
So they've just made a point to throw resources at that you haven't done. Now, I'm not suggesting that you have to go to 10 or 12, but sort of the focus of your staff historically has been, head down, do the work. And I'm not suggesting you go all the way to, you mentioned Toyota, to Plano or Frisco. But, council, would you like to see, as part of this, a little more, I'm not sure that braggadocious is the word, but swagger might be a good word.
I'd just say, even if it's not swagger, we just don't tell our story very well. And to your point, Randy, it's largely because we're all working very hard. We're doing the actual work, but whether it's swagger or being braggadocious, we really just don't tell our story that well. So
There's no downside to it that I can think of. I mean, it's,
Okay, good, staff. I mean, so start thinking in that. Now, realize that doesn't mean that council is going to approve 4 new people for that role, but the cost of entry into that world right now is so cheap through social media and through video and through other things that you do. I mean, if it starts off with your residents feeling like, oh, there's good things happening here. So here's an example. A few years back, a lady named Donna Barron was city manager of Louisville. And Donna and I were chatting, and she said, yeah, we got this great story. And here was the story. The EMS went and picked up somebody. For some reason, this guy was changing all the sod out in his front yard in the middle of the summer. You can see where this is heading, right? Lo and behold, he had a heart attack. EMS picked him up, transported him to the hospital. In the meantime, he's got all of his new sod is out there, lying there. And, how long's the recovery time for this guy, you think? Weeks, months, whatever? What's going to happen to his front yard? Yeah, well, I mean, first off, he had all the grass out, so it's just going to be dirt out there. And all this dead sod is going to be dead. So after the shift was over, on their own, the EMS guys got together that picked the guy up and went out and laid his sod. They didn't do it on shift time. They didn't do it. They got together after shift and went and laid the sod. By the way, would our team do that? Sure. That's an amazing story, don't you think? And my question to Donna is, why is not somewhere in a newsletter, in something, to let people know? And her response was, well, that's just the stuff we do here. Now, your team would probably do much the same thing. just the stuff you do here. But people don't see that. And that's part of letting people know. So, you have ways of doing it. Good. I made a couple of changes. One, be a great place to work. All right. Second is enhance connection. And the third is continuously improve, sort of breaks the flow of having an action item first. But if you said improve safety, security, and infrastructure every day, does that get you there?
Small things.
Yes.
I think
Small things matter.
maybe we could start with steward the people's money well, or something like that.
Sure.
Just to break up all the B's. And maybe you could do, yeah, what? Become easier to do business with, just to change the B. So it's not three of the same.
Good. We can do that. All good additions. By the way, little things matter. Little things matter a lot. So, talk about that difference.
We talked a lot yesterday about the word friendly when it comes to businesses, because we do want to be business friendly, but there's some businesses that we don't want to see necessarily on every corner. So they were saying, if this one business is, well, you're not friendly to me, anyway, there might be some businesses that would say that we're not friendly to them, if that makes sense.
Yes.
Let me also offer, this is a piece of the conversation that you had yesterday. It's not just businesses being friendly to do business with. We want residents too. Yeah. So, it's, I need a permit, I need do you all do permits for, do you do permits for toilet changes? Change that, put a new toilet in? Do you do permitting? So for example, yeah, there are cities that do require permits to put in a new toilet. And you think, well, why would they do that? Well, the rationale for doing that is it gives them a chance to go into the house, find out other life safety issues, and if the house is being rented, it gives them a chance to do the rental inspection as well. That's the rationale for doing it, but that's what they do. So, a way of being easier to do business with is you don't have to do that, if you did that. So there are very simple process things. Do you require a permit for a new fence?
7 panels or more.
Right. So there are folks that do that. They do for hot water heaters. They do for, right, all those things. So, and I'll tell you that there's some, for example, HVAC companies around that they will tell you, I won't do a call in that city because they require me to do a permit to do stuff. Now, think about that. So, which means the people that will do business in those kind of places, do you think you think they know that they're having an extra cost to do permit? So, yeah, it's thinking about those things that become easier to do business with.
And I'll just say this to that comment. It's not the permit. We'll just talk about HVAC, people that have said things to me. It's not the fact they get the permit, it's the difficulty in getting the permit. It's not that they have to get the permit. So I can go to other cities and get a permit much easier for the same process, but it's more difficult here just to get the permit. So it's not about getting the permit, it's about the hoops I had to jump through to get it here versus just getting it.
Believe it or not, there are still cities that don't do take out of your utility bill directly from your bank account. Yeah, I mean, you all do that, but there are still cities that go, no, I charge you a fee to do direct. Nobody does that, right? So that's the thinking, Tito. So let's think about this. Do you like this? Do you like it better now?
Yes, compared to the old ones, yes. The old ones were just kind of categories, but here it's more you're driving in a direction.
Right.
So.
Yes. Good. I heard the mayor say something that we could create an acronym using a word. So let me ask you, you know, Mansfield has North. Midlothian's looking at Beacon. Do you want us to do something with the word steward or standard? Standard has enough letters. I mean, this really comes down to how do you want to use this, right? If you could say, we could come up with an acronym for the word standard. We could come up with the acronym for the word steward.
I might have been a little facetious saying that, by the way.
Good. But, I mean, it's a fair question. Go ahead. What's that, Russ?
I did. Thank you, Russ. The council spent a lot of time on a few of these. I did want to ask the council, Randy, if we could focus on the stimulate development and redevelopment of neighborhoods and commercial centers.
Right.
And talk about that a little bit and what that means. I'm not sure if you were planning on doing that or...
That's one of the ones that we added yesterday, and the reason I went to it is there's a redevelopment focus. You have redevelopment block grants. You have those kind of things in the residential. And commercial area develop and redevelop is a way to help us sort of get to the notion of business attraction. One of the ways that you redevelop an area is by recruiting businesses to it. So that was the idea that I threw out there in my head to allow that. Now, whether that works or not, I'll let you guys tell me.
Clayton, I think the idea here for us was we need to focus, laser focus, once again, on revitalizing those corridors specifically. I mean, we have multiple corridors, I think. And then also, you know, a lot of talk around the south side of the city. So making that a goal, making it stand out. Love to hear any feedback you think on making that a goal. And then we'll have a bunch of stuff underneath it as far as the specifics.
In the context of the wording and what is behind it with the objectives and the action items and everything like that. But when we're talking about stimulating development and redevelopment of neighborhoods, we are just about built out. So we're talking about existing neighborhoods, and neighborhoods aren't necessarily just residential. Neighborhoods can be your corner commercial store, your grocery store at the corner. That is part of the neighborhood. And when we're talking about redeveloping existing neighborhoods, that might freak somebody out. You know, when we talk about neighborhoods existing, you want to also talk about conservation and protection of existing neighborhoods. That's a big thing for existing residents in North Richland Hills.
How about revitalization? Because that kind of stood out to me too, as far as the redevelopment word. When you talk about neighborhoods, it tends to scare people. They think you're talking about, you know, raising all the houses and all that. So, yeah.
Also,
they think you're talking about literally having somebody come in, buy the neighborhood, tear all the houses down.
Yeah,
You know?
green space too is a big thing for people. So yeah, this is good. This is good. Let's dig in.
Okay.
And to take it a little bit step further, sorry, the commercial centers to segregate and separate commercial centers from neighborhoods. Again, neighborhoods include commercial. So I think if you just broaden it to neighborhoods and understand that neighborhood includes commercial, if you all, agree with that and understand it, then it could just be neighborhoods instead of.
I think we had it separate too, because it's not just neighborhoods, it's also like a business that wants to come in. So there's supposed to be a sentence that kind of covers both sides of that.
I think he's saying it does. I don't know. I wasn't thinking it does. I think neighborhood, I think a bunch of houses. But from your planning perspective,
It said
you're like, no,
neighborhood
different
and
perspective,
commercial.
Yeah.
I mean, it's saying neighborhood and commercial, so in my head, I'm talking about residential and commercial.
You like that better?
I like it.
Clayton, what do you think?
It's y'all's goal. but that's better, I think, for sure, yeah.
What about Craig?
Well, and I think the public needs to understand that, you know, Clayton is a subject matter expert in planning.
Yes.
And he's very passionate about it, so.
Oh, yeah.
Which is great.
Yeah, keep in mind, we're writing this as if I had to talk to someone and I can also explain it. That's also a way how we're writing, or wording this.
Wait.
Randy, on the steward the public's money, I think it's supposed to say steward the public's money well, right?
Or if you want to change it to people's money, I don't know if that sounds nicer. Nope, just kidding.
Go ahead, Greg.
Wanted to say for the record, I do like the term revitalize better, and I do think there needs to be separation of neighborhoods and commercial. For Ricky's exact point, even though, right.
Does it need to be centers or corridors?
Right. That's a question to the council. Does it need to be corridors or centers? Because it's.
And I'll give you an example on that. We recently had talked to someone who had a business over here, and during the conversation, it was like his idea of revitalizing, and this goes down to the nitpicking of what we're going to call revitalize, was just to paint his building. You know, but I'm looking at his building, he's got iron bars on the windows. Like, you know, if we're going to revitalize and get rid of the iron bars first, and then talk about how you're going to redecorate your building or your property, your parking lot, your added tree or shrub or whatever. So I think there's a lot included in that if we're talking about, if we do one building and the rest of them, that, like you're talking about, that corridor looks like a dump, we didn't accomplish anything.
You like that better? Works? All right. We set? Good. Congratulations. We're right on time. How about a break? Staff worked on these objectives. And by the way, these objectives were both staff-driven and council-driven. So for safety, for example, maintain a low response rate, crime rate, all those things. For transportation, we talked about those issues. For financial stability, interesting, I blocked that one out. That was one that they took off in 2022. It had been on there previously, but reading some of your comments around no new tax rate and what have you, I thought, they marked it off. You might want to add something like that on of different funding alternatives. For city image, they took off last time, promote and initiate environmentally responsible programs. That was removed the last time the council did this in 2022. But you start to see some of the focuses that they'd had there. Sense of community. To the point that words matter. To a person, you all said the parks and the rec system here is is probably the best thing that we do. Right? Notice the word that they used to describe that objective. Award-winning. Versus everything else is maintain a cultural program. Targeted economic development, these are things that they worked on. These are all probably fall under local and regional leadership. We've removed that one obviously as a goal, but some of the things are still involved there, to be involved in setting direction for the region, those types of things. You notice the one that they had originally crossed out in 2022. Now, the thing that came about that, the real key there was shared services. And there was a period of time that cities across the state were very interested in shared services. And it's, you all do some of that right now, for example, through your dispatch as a shared service. For a while, cities were looking at a number of things for shared services. For example, if you own a golf course, you know, you don't really own a golf course, but if you did, one of the pieces of equipment you would have to buy would be something that aerates the greens. That's right, you own a golf course, and you own that piece of equipment, right? How often do you use that equipment? How often do you aerate the greens? 3 or 4 times a year. How long does it take to aerate the greens? So what's happening to that piece of equipment the rest of the time? Smaller sections and what have you. But, you know, could 4 cities own that share that piece of equipment? Possibly. I mean, it was that sort of thinking was what originally drove that. Now, the other part, though, is efficiency, cost savings, and effectiveness. You could add that back in, obviously. But that was one of the things that they had even talked about, is continuing to focus on process and solution. So you notice that develop in 2022, develop City Point changed to create a development plan for main commercial corridors. So they expanded that beyond City Point that had been City Point initially. They took out for developers, but incentives to redevelop commercial properties, as opposed to, part of the thinking there was, if you tell developers that you want developers to revitalize residential properties, the message to citizens is what? Somebody's coming in, right? They're going to gentrify it or flip it. And so that became something that they didn't want to do. So, here's the way this will work. I'll go back to our 7 goals. You get an idea of the kinds of things that pop out. Let's see, we're going to have, how many staff people? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. Are you going to play? Yeah, 17. You're not playing, you're right there. So 17 divided, in Caroline, 18 divided by 7 is, let's go with 3. Yeah, 2 or 3. So,
Can I
we're going to
get
have a
some-
council member with each group as well, yes?
Can I get some clarification really quick before we split up? This is to do what in these
This
groups?
will be to develop what are the priorities we need to focus on next. And it can be things we need to maintain, things we need to stop doing, or things we need to start doing. So start, stop, continue to move us toward, to do these things.
I'm wondering, I know it's easier for us to do that, but I feel like there are certain people that need to be a part of multiple of the groups because it would apply to different departments. So
very possibly.
We wouldn't want, Ms. Wagner to not be a part of another group that she would have some sort of integration in. So that's my only concern is if we're splitting up that way.
It is going to come back and, staff, we're going to ask all of you to help guide people in which direction. But it does make sense to sort of split it up, and then we're going to bring it back. So, let's start with staff side first. Paulette, I'm going to let you want to voluntold some people on these things. So, I mean, because you and your team know who ought to best go where. So it's more efficient for you just to say, these are the people that probably ought to go in this group.
Okay, so I'm telling people
Which one of these groups?
Which group
We're going to
they-
have a group for each of these. Which one they're going to go to?
Okay.
Or who-
Four.
yeah,
Well,
so-
obviously, I'm going to start from the bottom because that's easy. Improve safety, security, and infrastructure.
Let's get the library involved in that.
The Chiefs and Bo for that group.
Okay, you got the Chiefs and Bo. Now, I need a council member to work with them. Tito, all right? Good. Don't have to get up yet, Tito, don't worry.
And then engage residents to enhance connection. I'm going to ask Clayton, Cecilia, and Adrian.
Clayton, Cecilia, Adrian, and Susie.
Okay.
Susie was like horse
Actually,
jack.
wait a minute. I'm going to change because I forgot Mary. Mary needs to be in that group. So, so I'm going to switch somebody out. Let's do Adrian. I'm going to reserve you for another group.
The revitalization.
Well, yes, except that Clayton is so good at the public engagement ideas as well. So he's good at a lot of things. He does. He's the standard. Revitalize neighborhood commercial corridors. Craig and Caroline. And who else is left?
You can have a couple, just Greg and Caroline, and
Yeah.
and we need a council member. All right, we've got one. Yes, Matt.
Matt. Be a great place to work. Patrick. Stephanie.
Okay. Because you're going to run out of staff here pretty
Yeah,
soon.
okay.
So Patrick
And
and
then,
Stephanie. Okay,
let's
wait,
see.
we need a council member to go to be a great place to work. All right.
Steward the public's money well. Well, I need Trudy for a different one. Chase and Jay.
Chase and Jay, got it? And a council member to do that about stewarding money?
I can do that.
Kelvin, banker guy, you ought to be able to do this, right?
And then become easier to do business with. Well, let me do drive operational excellence first. That's going to be Trudy and Adrian.
And who
Adrian.
wants to do council-wise? Trudy and Russ, okay?
And who do I have left for the easier to do business with?
Okay.
Okay, Rebecca and Eric. But I do need, so I'm going to need Trudy and Caroline and Clayton as well to kind of float, because they have ideas
Well,
in multiple areas.
when we come back
Okay.
together as a group, there'll be an opportunity for them to add.
Because in the easier to do business with, I need Clayton there also.
Okay, well, yeah, there'll be an opportunity when we get stuff, when we come back to the group.
Okay, for
they'll be there.
everybody to take.
Now,
a look.
here's
Okay.
your goal. Here's the task involved. I want you to think about priorities. Obviously, things we need to start doing, we need to continue doing. By the way, you could say start or enhance.
Easier to
So
do
these are things we need to start or enhance.
Which is-
We're doing this now, but we need to start doing more of it or enhance it. So the goal is things we need to stop doing, things we need to start or enhance, things we need to continue doing, just kind of continue to stay the course. So an example, be a great place to work. Things we can continue to do. Have high standards for applicants. Okay, that's an easy one. But that gives you an idea. Now, think about be a great place to work. What should we stop doing? I'm curious. Think about it for a second. If we're going to be a great place to work, what should we stop doing?
A clarification, it can be in any area.
Yeah.
Okay, not just that particular.
Right, but it could be, for example, here's one I've heard another city say. I'm not saying you do this, another did it. Stop requiring college degrees for jobs when someone without a college degree could do exceptionally well at it.
I think the fire department just did that with lowering it to 18 years old to hire, which can come out. I mean, granted, it makes the path a little longer to move up, but it was effective because there were kids that were already ready to do that when they came out of high school. So, right. But we're going to hit. You're just giving this as an example to
These
think
are
about
examples.
right now, and then
right.
break
Yeah,
out.
you're
Okay.
going to go out there. So I just want to give you some examples of the kinds of things. And there's some things we ought to start doing, for example, whatever those might be, for each of your areas. I'm going to give you, it's 12 after 10, 30 minutes? Do you need 30, or can you do it in 20? 30? Tell you what, I'm going to give you 30. If I see people are breaking up, don't just sit and talk about the weekend. If you're breaking up, come back. Fair enough? Sure. Okay. And I'm going to let you split up, go wherever you need to go in the room. All right. I'm going to ask folks to help me as people come up with ideas. If you would capture, let's see, I need some folks staff-wise, if you guys could help. Things that when somebody for each goal, just on a Post-it note, do you have Post-it notes back there? You do now. Things we need to think for each goal, things we need to start, stop, or continue, enhance. As we go through that way we can capture them and get them all up on the wall. That's the easiest way to make sure we stay going. Then, after we do that, from a process standpoint, after we have a chance to hear everybody out, we'll have a chance to then reflect on it and go, this is a higher priority, this is a lower priority, that type of thing. But the first thing is to get all the ideas out. Now, I will also warn you that it's very easy to paper walls with more things to do than we can get accomplished. So after we get all the ideas out and you get to hear everything, then we'll come back and say, but these are really the ones that are critical. And, to do this, it's going to bump up against this, because at the end of the day, we still only have X amount of time Y amount of dollars, Z amount of resources. So let's start with the first group, drive operational excellence. Who's the, talk to us.
So I'll be the spokesperson on behalf of my phenomenal group. We're the best group ever.
We're setting the standard for every group to follow.
There you go. We're going
Yeah.
to set the standard for every other group. Okay, since we're driving it in every area. And so we want, so areas that we talked about in terms of the start area was to define and articulate expectations. For enhancements, we talked about incorporating regular feedback to be resolution-oriented, to ensure training aligns with our stated goals, and to also enhance our communication. In terms of stop, we said to stop assuming that existing practices are suffice.
Okay, so let's talk about what that one means, because does that also assume that you're going to be looking at, council in the past has talked a lot in conversation about efficiency audit, process audit. By the way, efficiency audit can be process audit or efficiency audit. Where does, that would seem to fit into this goal pretty quick, you know, where would that fall into what you've talked about? Or does it, or do we need to think about it?
So in terms of efficiencies, I would think that that has to do with defining and articulating the expectations in the sense that what is it that we are trying to do in a given area? And then when we're getting the feedback, when we're looking at those things, is it happening? And being that resolution-oriented piece, but is it actually happening? Are we meeting that mark? Are there things that we need to be doing differently than we are right now?
Any reaction? So, sort of the good news and the bad news. Your green belt? We've got a Six Sigma green belt in the room. A Six Sigma green belt. Just above yellow, so.
I can certainly organize all your stuff, make it efficient in your home. Stuff
Yeah,
like that.
it's just above yellow, but it's not black. But, so help me, remind me here. PDCA, which stands for, quick test?
Yeah, it's been a long time since I've had to do this PDCA. Now,
Plan, do, check, act. Yeah, plan, do, check, act. Now, there's also, people have added another piece of that, is refine under there, too. So that's sort of the process. Now, you talked about education as part of this. I want, because this is, and the reason I'm harping on this maybe a little more than I should, is this became so obvious in all of your comments that I want to make sure that we hit this appropriately. As part of the education and driving this, I know that you've done, you said we're going to do audit in some areas. Should we also be thinking about education that teaches everyone sort of how to think and process like this?
Okay, so you're giving me a segue. I feel like you're giving me a ball. You're throwing the ball to me. So one thing I know, one of the comments was about that they, asked about efficiency audits, and we did a while back contact several companies, and just giving you kind of the one of which Blake had recommended, and we talked with them about an efficiency audit, what that looked like. What it really is process, efficiency audits, they look at it as process improvement. So they don't always save you money, they could cost you money, but at the end of the day, what they're about is process improvement. So there are, in the budget, I'll just kind of give you a little teaser. We want to do, I'm proposing a couple of things. There are a couple of areas where we do need an efficiency audit and a process improvement process improvement consultation. One of those is building inspections, permits in particular, and also in IT. So this is also news to some of my directors because these have only been discussions between us. The other thing that we're looking at, and it was actually after Randy's interviews with you all, or with most of you, he called me and we started talking through that. We're also looking at getting some training, Lean Six Sigma training, and plugging in money. We're going to ask you for money in the budget to train our directors to think like this, and how that improves operational excellence and also efficiency. So that's kind of what we're looking at there. And the reason is because when we contacted those companies back in the fall to do an entire organization-wide efficiency audit, every company told us would be in the $1 million range, $1 million to $2 million, depending on how many. A department, when we used an example, we gave them an example at that time of building inspections, permitting, development services. They were saying probably around 150-ish for a department. So that's what they said then. The numbers that we've gotten back for kind of the Lean Six Sigma training, we actually kind of just got a quote yesterday, and it's a lot lower than I would expect, and it includes a certain number of, I think, what belt level of
Green belt,
Six Sigma.
probably.
But anyway,
Yeah,
I don't want to
yellow.
get into the weeds. This is supposed to be just a teaser of what's coming in the budget, but but you can say.
Sure. So we would look at all directors doing the yellow belt, and then, but that's just a couple of days. And then we'd go back and take a smaller subset to go through the green belt process, which is about 10 days. But to really get that green belt, they also have to walk through a project, which will take a few months. And so in order to make sure that we can actually achieve it by the end of the fiscal, we'd look to do a subset of that group of directors. But we would look to do both, yellow and green, and all directors would have at least yellow.
I feel like Blake has
Yeah,
something
so
to
that's
say.
kind of the part of the education. So I just want to make sure as you
He
think
did.
about,
He leaned forward.
yeah. So the reason I wanted to give you that opportunity, hang on, if I can, is I know that you've been talking about that, and it's easy to think about education and go, where does that fit? Hopefully, council, you kind of get a sense of what they're thinking so you can get some reaction.
Yeah, first off, I think education, what I'm most concerned about is mindset, and that's what we're talking about here, is getting all of the people leading the charge with the right mindset that says, how do I steward the people's money well? And what I don't want to happen is a mindset that says, here's everything I'm supposed to do, and I'm just going to make sure it gets done. And I want the mindset to be, is everything I'm being told to do the best use of the citizens' resources, right? I want you to be looking at everything you do every single year and not saying, we're just going to start here and then, that's my bar. I want you to identify things that say, this is a waste of money. This is not giving us the return on investment that we had intended. Or maybe it is doing a good thing, but we don't think it's the best use. We would really rather shift that money over here. So that's mindset stuff, which I think this is touching on. As far as the actual efficiency audit, we can debate whether or not it's a good investment, and that is going to be based on what the return on investment is projected to be. If it costs $1 million, but it saves us $10 million over the next 10 years, maybe that is something we want to look at. We don't have to talk about, the details of that now. I do think this is a good, starting point for sure. And then but the hard part is going to be if we go to the citizens and say, we're going to need to raise taxes, $1 million this year, in order to fund essential services, I want to be able to tell them but here's all the things that we cut in order to try to prevent this from happening. And if I can't go to them and say, oh, we've absolutely nothing to cut, we're 100% efficient, but I can't prove it to them, I can't show them that each of the departments stripped this, they stripped that, they said we don't need this anymore, that's what I need, and that's why when I look at an efficiency audit, it gives me that to say, I'll point to this and say, here's what we're stripping out. And yet we still need to do this because of inflation, because of the competitive market we're in and prices. So does that make sense?
No, it does. And just to clarify too, most of our directors already have that mindset. And again, I think this is just a story or just an example of where we haven't told our story very well in the past about what happens internally in the budget process, but that's how they start. And in fact, one of the things that they have to identify is not just what they want to add to the budget, but is there a stop doing list? And so that if there is, they have to identify that. They also, particularly this year, have been told things like that. And then it's the assistant city managers, when they review the budgets, and then when it gets to me, they've already gone through all these things, but if you want to do something additional, first look and see where you can cut something else. And so this year, all of the ATBs identify that. ATBs are what we call add to base. So that's like additional items. So, and also they're having to justify in their line items too. Their line items, and I said this last year, and this is, but they start from zero. So they don't, when they go in to enter their budget into the system for review, they don't start with a number. They have to put in a number, and then they have to justify if now there is a comparison line of what it is in the adopted budget, so they see that, but they have to justify and explain if it increases or if it decreases. This year, there was extra emphasis on that justification as well. So I'm saying that to say there is a mindset there for most departments already. But again, we can always get better. And I think one thing we haven't been doing well, again, is telling our story and showing the data that shows. This is why we don't think that, even though most of the departments have the data, that's how they know. For example, library, you know what, we really don't need to do this program anymore because nobody participates in it, or whatever. Or how they know we need to do this one because they survey their users to say, what are the things that we're not doing that you would like to see? So those types of things, but we're not good at sharing that data with you all. Everybody's kind of operated in their own silos to that extent. And so, anyway, you'll see we're going to share with you in your budget discussions what we're calling optimizations in that regard, and where we've looked at, we're going to fund this by cutting this in some situations. So,
and that's kind of where any company, that's had long-term leadership, a lot of those things get by the wayside as far as proving yourself up anymore, because you don't feel the need to do it anymore. Which is why change is a good thing.
Yeah.
Because all of a sudden it brings in fresh ideas and fresh thoughts and fresh ways to look at things, whether it's right, wrong, or indifferent, right? And I think that's what a lot of people are after. It's, like I said, I am happy to tell the story. I just need to know what story I'm telling and be able to support. And I'm happy to be on that side, not taking a position and saying we have to be here, because I don't like guidelines, because guidelines kill success or free thought. So I'd rather say, here's what it is, and you can believe this, but here's where we are metric-wise.
So let me also go back. Paulette mentioned that she...
Randy, sorry.
Yes, sorry.
I do want to say too really quick, I think it's important that we emphasize it here, and maybe in this category, right? I want leadership to be judged on this metric. I want you to be judged in a way that says, where have you found efficiency? So yes, it may be on the, here's why we need this increase, but I want to have a separate category that says, hey, look how great, this department saved money for the citizens. And maybe we make an award or an incentive around that or something. This is whatever it is. I remember in the Navy, my supply corps officer always came around in September, and he would say, hey, we're getting close to the fiscal year. Buy everything you can. We've got, whatever it was like, we have $186,000 left.
Submarine, whatever you want.
It's stupid. It's like, no, why are you doing this? But he literally would walk around to every department and he said, hey, we've got this much money, you need to put in everything else you need. Like, no, if you don't need it, don't buy it. 12 reams of paper you don't need. I don't know.
So anyone else comment? So Paulette mentioned that she and I chatted. A couple of things that provide context. I'm really glad that you're thinking about yellow belt and green belt training. Which you can also look, there's some really good online classes around that you can do for a couple $100 a pop, $250, $300 a pop in some cases. So you might look at those as well. One of my clients at an offsite around operational excellence, the top 23 people in their company all agreed to get green belt or black belt certified. Top 23 folks. Now, these are all highly committed people. It's a very good company. It's a brand name in their area. It's, when I tell you the company in that town, everybody goes, oh, I know them. And here's what changed. The head of sales, who you would think his job is just to go out and get revenue, right? Sales team goes out and he became green belt certified. And all of a sudden, he started looking at what's the process of generating revenue and how do we become more effective. He also began to think about products that he was selling. How's that going to work that they can produce them efficiently and for the best return? And so he was applying that literally across, and he all of a sudden went from being, just a salesperson going out and closing deals to being a commercial officer who's looking at what's the overall profitability and revenue of the business. Now, we don't have that exact person here, but I think the concept is really interesting. Now, as a sidelight, he also told me, he said, I have totally disrupted my family because I came home and completely reorganized how we hang Christmas lights at our house. So it has some effect there as well, right, Ricky? It has some impact there. So, one of the things with mindset is mindset will get you 70% there, 80% there. And then I need the tools to get there, to start putting my mindset. The other example I shared with Paulette is a few years back, the CFO for Texas A&M University called me up and said, I just want to know if you want to bid on this project. I'm having someone come in and look at how we do our processes, how we do our business, and give us a recommendation. And I had him scope out the work, and I called him up and said, look, I'm interested in helping you. As I see it, you've got about $250,000 budgeted for that one department. And his response was, I can neither confirm or deny, but you're not far off. And I said, so what if you could get 80% of the result for less than half of the money? Would that be a good trade-off? And his answer was, what do you think? Yeah. And I said, because your staff knows where the areas of efficiencies are. What they need is a framework to be able to go and apply that to. And I have no doubt with this team, I mean, just out of curiosity, just the people in the room, if I just said right now this question, how many of you can think of at least one thing in your area that you've always thought, I'm not sure why we do that, because it doesn't really, I'm not sure what value that it adds. How many, just one, it can be a minor, how many of you can think, well, yeah, sure. All right, good. Now, imagine if we had, how many staff total?
500 and full-time equivalents.
Yeah. Imagine if we had 500 people doing that. So some of this starts to move in that area. It is a mindset supported by the way, the fact that those top 23 people are all green belt and black belt certified, it has changed their culture dramatically. Because it changes how they process information. So, good. So as long as we got that. All right. Become easier to do business with. Who's the spokesperson? All right. You guys are catching up on, okay, good.
So it ties in a little bit to what we were already talking about. And of course, I got to hang out with the IT professionals, so it's a little bit IT intensive over here. First off, one of the things that we recognized was we tried to have the mindset of what is the customer interaction here, what is the customer experiencing when they interact with the city through different departments. One thing, as far as we also looked at it from a self-service perspective, how do we maybe increase the self-service experience? Having a one-stop shop sort of thing for a customer as far as the portal is concerned might alleviate a lot of the frustrations that they're having. Right now, they may have to go to, I think one of the things we talked about is they may need a permit, but they don't know how to get to the permit, and that may take them to 7 different screens. And then we also talk about the longer it takes them to get the information they need, the more frustrating the experience becomes. And so identifying how to kind of strip down that time that it takes, or the amount of effort that a customer is putting in, so making it easier to do business with us, right? We looked at maybe having a mindset or a goal for integrating innovative technology in every department at every level, being open to that. And I know that costs money, right? But we at least need to be identifying those things that we could be doing and then building a list around it. I threw in AI. I think AI would be super cool. With the example we talked about, right now when you go to the web page, it says search. And I'm like, well, I don't really know what I'm searching for. Maybe I'll get into it. And I know even if I'm trying to look into the different ordinances that we've passed, it's super difficult to find what I'm looking for or what I want. And I thought even having just a chat bot that knows how can I help you today instead of search, kind of changing the mindset of how we interact with them. Are you laughing at me?
No, certainly not.
Yeah, you're not. Whatever. and then basically a customer can just say, "Hey, I want to build a fence or something," and it's like, "Great. Well, here's our ordinance on blah blah blah. It requires you to get it if you do this. Here's how you do it. If you want to go ahead and sign up for your permit now, boom, and click this." And I know it's not a perfect technology yet, but I think there's ways for us to implement and start testing that with the proper warnings to citizens. Say, "Hey, this may not be perfect yet, but we want to improve your experience." Right? That's our mindset of what we're doing here. Also, I think it's necessary that we kind of we need to first identify all the types of customers that we have in each department. Even in the court system, you have different types of customers. It could be defendants, it could be lawyers, it could be police officers. We've talked about if someone, in my personal experience, which I know is unique, but I'm just going to tell you what the experience is, but I'm not mad about it. But I had an interaction with the police 4 months ago. We filed a report, and then it just kind of went silent for a little while. And so I emailed in to the only contact that I had, and it was silent for about a week or so. And I emailed again, and they're like, "Oh, sorry, I wasn't here," or whatever. I'll find out information, and went silent again. And I emailed again, and he's like, "Oh yeah, it's now with the prosecutor over here." And I'm like, "Okay." And then I emailed a few weeks later. I'm like, "Okay, how about now?" And he's like, "Oh, I don't know. You have to talk to the court." And I'm like, "Well, can I get the prosecutor's email?" And they're like, "No, we don't give that out." I'm like, "Okay, I'll call the court." Call the court, and they're like, "Well, this person's not here, but we'll talk to this person or leave a voicemail to get back to you." A few days later, they get back to me and they said, "Oh, it's the prosecutor." So the whole experience has been like 4 months, and I have no idea what's going on. And I know my particular case is very unique, and it's a stupid situation, but I can't imagine for someone who has maybe a more important thing going on, maybe they experience something very frustrating. Is it similar for them, where there's just not a lot of information? There's this party's not talking to this party. One of the things we did, which hopefully nobody got mad about this, but we walked into one of the departments over here and just said, "Hey, what is just off the top of your head, what do you think is your customer's biggest frustration?" And they said, "Well, a lot of times," we dug around a little bit, and they were like, "A lot of times a customer has been transferred 3 or 4 different times trying to find out what they need." And so we talked about, man, wouldn't it be great if there was just a single point of contact, kind of a customer service ambassador or ombudsman or whatever, and they owned that customer throughout the entire process. So it's not go talk to this person over here, then go talk to this department over here, then go talk to this person over here, but it's just one person who's kind of doing that behind the scenes, and they're the face of the city to that customer. I don't know if that's possible, but it's just kind of neat. I think what we've seen is that there's silos or walls that have been erected between departments, and it's not as much on the top. I think everybody in here does a lot of interacting together, but at the bottom level, these people just don't know what's going on in other rooms. And so it creates this more frustrating experience for the customer. So they can't find the information they want easily on the website to self-service themselves, right? And then when they come into the actual departments, it's just frustrating because this department only knows this section, and then they'll say, well, go talk to this person. But then they go over there and, nope, that wasn't the right person. Go over to this person. Nope, that wasn't the right person. Go back to this person. You just asked the wrong question, right? So how do we eliminate a lot of that? I'm almost done. Then we have, so I thought maybe, or we thought maybe, having an ombudsman, I don't know the right words here, but one person in maybe each department or something that's in charge of this idea of creating process change or process improvement, and identifying the areas, because if nobody's actively searching for it, then they're not going to really find it, right? So one person whose responsibility is to, your job is to improve customer experience, right? And then a way of collecting data we've already talked about is maybe every single interaction with the city, every single one, no matter what it is, it could be phone, it could be email, text, whatever, get some sort of feedback mechanism. So, hey, how did we do today? How could we improve your experience? Just get something that data begins to flow in, and start getting a ton of data that we can then, that person over that process or whatever can start looking at, and identify those cool new things that we could try. And, maybe that's also build an incentive and recognition program. We mentioned that a few minutes ago. An incentive or recognition program that drives that motivation or that mindset. This is not just something, as part of your job, but it's like, we're going to reward you. We're going to promote you for this type of mindset, and then make that infectious among the rest of the people. Did I miss anything? No?
To a certain
Are you sure?
extent. And we already do.
All right.
The problem is, like what I
Hold on
mentioned
a second.
before,
Good?
Everybody's so busy in their work,
Okay.
like nobody remembers to.
So let me ask, did you all catch enough out of that you could bullet point out of it? Okay, good.
I can say it again if you want.
Now, yeah. By the way, the interesting part about that is, easier to do business with is a relative term. By the way, our customers, if you will, don't compare us to other cities. They compare it to the easiest experience they have in their life. So, which is sort of good news and bad news. If we're compared to the cable company, we're heroes, right? If we're compared to Chick-fil-A, maybe not, right? So, part of that also is there are little things that enhance the experience. Now, I can imagine the police chief back there going, all right, so we're going to ask for an experience, we're going to ask for an evaluation. How was your arrest today?
I like that. I think that feedback exists. It will be mostly negative.
The metrics are different.
The back of the truck was uncomfortable because there was no interior, right? It's just that.
Yeah, at the same time, I had this city that I worked with several years ago. I'm not going to tell you which one, but I found out that they got a letter, and the letter was to the city manager, and the letter started off, "Dear Mr. and Ms. So-and-so," said, "The first thing I want you to know is that my husband has been in virtually all the jails in this county."
Alrighty then.
So it started with that. And then it continued on to say, "And I'm writing to tell you that of all the jails, yours is by far the friendliest and the nicest."
Oh my God.
And the manager said, "I'm not sure what to make of that."
Is that good or bad?
Is that good or bad? The good news is it was a great experience. The bad news is it was a great experience, right? So I think that, part of this, yeah. We'll leave the light on. What I wanted to say is we'll leave the light on. So, I think as you think through that, now, likewise, I know of another city that tried to sort of create that positive. And one of the things they did is they started this program Chief, maybe you've heard about this from other police departments, where police officers pulled people over to congratulate them for driving safe. You ever heard of those? Right. And what's the experience that you hear?
Why'd you stop me?
We're also stopping somebody without probable cause, and that can create problems in and of itself.
So that created a problem, and actually the feedback they had from residents in this particular community is, please stop doing that. Because when a police car pulls in behind you and those lights start flashing, what's the first thing that comes into your mind? Yeah, what did I do, right?
Yeah.
And so it was a good idea,
It's a nice, friendly bill. Sorry.
but
She's a sign next
right.
Thanks for driving.
So, I mean, I think anything that you can do, remember the whole goal is we want to set the standard in how we do this. So, I mean, all those things become part of the process. Good. Let's talk about steward the public's money well. Who's the spokesperson?
Jake.
All right, so we went ahead and wordsmithed this, so I'm going to read our 7 bullet points. Emphasize the public's understanding of how the city manages its finances. Increase collaboration with the community in the budget development process. Collaboratively develop a long-term financing strategy for capital needs. And specifically there, we're getting at debt versus pay-as-you-go. Next one is conduct targeted, credible efficiency audits of city operations with the goal of maintaining or improving service levels with fewer resources. So the discussion that we had on that one was, with efficiency audits, is the goal to kind of cut out lines of business that may not be seen as valuable, or is the goal to more or less assume that we want to keep the portfolio of services that we offer but try and reduce costs? And the conversation that our group had was more the second than the first. So that's why that one got a little wordy. The next one, continually improve financial policies and procedures based on best practices. The second to last one is maximize the benefit of public funds through effective cash flow management. And then the last one, stop treating compliance as mission accomplished. Be better.
So a couple of things on that. I think first of all, can you go through the first one?
Yep. Emphasize the public's understanding of how the city manages its finances.
So right now, we're talking about transparency. Folks are concerned about that. I think the roadshow is a great idea. We continue to do that type of stuff. You'll continually, get Mary involved in different things for communication, going down through there. We're talking about the public, the roadshow is great in August, but the second bullet is,
Increase collaboration with the community in the budget development process.
So in January and February, we have surveys, we have road shows, town hall type of things where we're asking folks, hey, what's important to you? And that way we're up front in front of the budget process, as opposed to in August, it's kind of the back end. They can't really make any changes at that point.
Good stuff. I have one question. Is it only to reduce cost, or do you also want to sort of hold the line and flatten the curve on growth? Is that part of some costs are going to grow. Simply inflationary costs and what have you, but if costs are going up, IT is a great example.
Right.
In most organizations, the IT growth goes like this, and if you can make it go like this, that's an improvement. So did you all talk about that at all?
We did talk about inflationary pressures and stuff. Something to be considered, I guess, but.
Council, do you have a reaction to that? Is it primarily to reduce costs, also to hold the line? Do you have a feeling?
I mean, obviously, you can't anticipate, the last 3 years of 20% inflated costs. But how do you, I think you're managing the cash flow appropriately, does hedge, obviously, as best you can there. I mean, that is hard to do. I'll just say, because a lot of that is so much out of your control. And how do you plan for that? Because sometimes you can plan for something and then you go into either a flat or deflationary period, and then you've planned the wrong way, and then you've created risk. So, because you have very tight risk tolerances at a city or a school or things like that, where you don't in a business, and you can dramatically hedge in a business where you can't do that in a city. At least I'm thinking about from a money manager's perspective and all that, an investment perspective. I know what I can do personally, and it's certainly paid off and paid poorly in both sides, but that I wouldn't want my city to do those things.
And a couple of things that are built into that also, is talking about, what's our future, our debt structure is going to look like, what's our financial policy going to look like, are we going to try to pay cash, whatever, grants, continue. I think the city does a great job, looking for grants, but, emphasis on, continue the grants. What else do we talk about, guys, on some of those subsets of that? Oh, the $7 million, cash flow, that we keep basically on hand. Could we lean that out a little bit better to, get any type of interest dollars in there that we have to keep?
Yeah, debt is the one I think that was kind of recurring in a conversation about things, and how that debt service affects us, and how that debt payoff schedule or laddered, or however it is that it's handled, I think would be helpful knowledge from transparency perspective for people to better understand where we are with that.
And by the way, the state has made it more challenging in how you look at debt.
They always do.
So, I mean, it's just, but, and it's not an easy thing. It's not an easy explanation, Paulette.
Sorry. Yeah, so, and again, it's not an easy explanation or discussion, but this is part of what we will talk about when we get into the tax rate and debt discussion in more detail. But when the state changed the revenue cap, so to speak, so no new revenue, and what that amount was, and then what the voter approval rate was. They used to be called different things, so that's why I have to pause to remind me what they're called now. But what happened there is they made it less viable to do pay-as-you-go funding because of that cap, voter approval rate. So what it did, it basically, in a way, was kind of incentivize using debt for more things, because there's not the same cap on the debt service side of the rate. So that's a really simplified explanation of it. But prior to all of that, there was a lot of pay-as-you-go funding that the city of North Richland Hills did. Now, beyond that explanation, as far as the debt amount and what it is now, the largest portion of that is City Hall plus now the street bonds that were approved in 2020, which are voter-approved debt. So that is the significant majority portion of the debt that we hold and are paying off now. But anyway, so it's a real simple explanation. We'll get into it more detail during budget time, but that's basically what happened.
Comments?
I think first off, we have a lot of very smart people that live here, and they're very understanding when things are communicated properly and when the expectation is set properly, right? If we go to them and say, to the citizens, and say, hey, this is necessary for these reasons, and we back it up with the data that we've been talking about of how we prove that we are stewarding their money well. Because there's just, in the political state that we're in now, there's a natural mistrust of government, right? There's an assumption that government is inefficient. Not, you know what I mean? And so recognizing that, how do we overcome that mindset that is already in the place of the citizens? And then, you can overcome the people that the vast majority of people who just pay their tax bill, right, and hate politics altogether. But then there's the other subset of people who are like, no, absolutely, we have to decrease taxes. We have low tax. Okay, that's good. And it's easy to say. It's hard to do, right? And also recognizing that we're a very small portion of the tax rate. I get that, of the overall tax bill. But the important part here is that we demonstrate to the citizens that at the city level, the closest thing to you, we do care deeply about it. We're going to do all the stuff. I mean, I love everything that we're talking about. I'm on board totally. With the upfront communication, what Kelvin was just talking about, we're starting early in the process. We're proving to them what we're doing. We're reducing costs where we want to reduce costs, and we're holding the line so that you don't see tax increase after tax increase after tax increase, which I think is what they feel like they've seen, especially due to the appreciation we saw for the past decade. Not as much now, obviously. So that's my only thing. I don't think the priority is reduce costs, right? Like, it's not just cut. Yes, that's an important thing, but it's a more holistic approach is where I'm coming from.
Really good example of the communication piece is, the SRO program. I mean, you explain to people, hey, you need to have, police officers or whatever in a school. Most people are not going to say, oh, well, hey, I don't want my taxes going up because I don't want to protect the kids. So.
And where possible, like, I would love to see more opportunity for the voters to weigh in directly on these types of questions. Like, if it is going to be a tax increase, then give them that decision. And if they approve it, then that's good. It takes the weight off of me. Like, hey, this seems necessary. I think the voters should go ahead and have a say in it. Some things they don't need to. Some things, let's go ahead and find ways to improve that or increase that participation.
And there's probably a third bucket, and those two buckets are there, and there's probably a third bucket. There are some things that even the voters go, I don't understand why we're doing that. And we go, but we have to do it anyway.
Yeah, so that's, yeah. And also, there is a cost with every election, just so you know, not good, better, and different. That's something that'll have to be considered. The cost now is, on average,
About 35,000.
per election. So there's that. And then that's another discussion we'll get into later about, because I know that was some of the questions, and we intend to go through this with y'all, but the COs versus GOs, certificates of obligation, non-voter approved debt, what that's used for, and it's exactly what Randy just said. There are some things that like replacing a fire engine, for example, that's expensive, that we have to do. So if you put that up for election and the voters turn it down, then you can't do it at all. So, and that's not the best example. Probably a better example is if we had to come in and replace a full sewer line or water main or something like that. And I get it. I agree with you though. Like, people are smart and they will understand it. At the same time, there's some things that, like, we have to do it anyway. It's not, we don't have a choice. So when you put it up for election, and if they vote it down, the state law, we can't do it at all. So.
By the way,
Does
there
that
have
make
been
sense?
some cities where cities have tried to skirt around that regulation, and it doesn't end well. Let's put it that way. So, I mean, I think we just have to be aware that when that happens. Sewer line is a great example. Also, by the way, if you think, sewer line's gone out. All right, we're going to hold an election. Do we do that? In the meantime, we've got... Right. All right, let's move on. Be a great place to work.
I guess I'm it.
Go ahead.
Okay. Let's see. The first thing is I wrote down utilizing new tech, but we kind of broke it down to utilizing the tools that are out there, like LinkedIn, for example, and using things of that nature that's already out there, and you could kind of start hunting your type of candidate. So that's one aspect. So using things that are already out there, but using the right tools. Marketing better. So this it seems to be the theme. We're going to have to communicate. So whoever the PR team, you guys are going to be about to be very busy, but it needs to happen. Marketing better. So when we're talking about spreading the word when it comes to hiring, so if there's a position out there, we're going to have to spread the word about it. And then on top of that, and this is just I was kind of told for outwardly expressing it, articulate that you're doing this for service. You guys understand that internally. You know that. You guys are here for service. But for the candidate out there, realizing like you're coming here for the service of the people, that's always going to be number one. And so making sure when we're spreading the word, it's about you're working here for the service of the great people of Northwestern Hills. That's why you do it. Staying competitive. This is something to keep. You're staying competitive, keeping the process, because the hiring process is pretty smooth, I was being told, compared to corporations that you're going to do multiple levels of interviews, doing projects and things like that, where here they understand that, okay, if I'm going to take longer than 2 weeks to hire you, that person's leaving. So the process moves is something we're going to keep. Focus on service, we talked about that. Change, continuously looking at job descriptions. So maybe like 5 years ago, if one job is saying that, you got to have a 4-year degree and this or that, and then after a while you're like, I don't need a degree. What's the point of this? Or you don't need that certification to do this job well. Maybe start looking at every job description and say, okay, for the future, if we need to hire this, the requirements should it change? Do you really need a degree? Do you really need a certificate? Things like that. So things do change. So continuously looking at job descriptions for that particular purpose. I was also told we need to keep, and this is now internally where the culture of why this place is the greatest place to work, is you guys have a portal about talking about celebrating successes, or sending out like kudos, like, hey, great job, and it's really in between departments. So you guys do that internally to every department, but saying like, hey, maintenance, thanks for doing that. You're putting a lot of kudo out for that. So it's celebrating the small individual successes. Obviously, you're here to serve the people, but at the same time, it also feels great that someone noticed that you're doing a great job. But also then using that, and here's nothing to change, of also putting that out there and making sure that the people know that what's happening. And so, for example, like you were saying, I imagine we would fix that sod on that person's house. But at the same time, I also want the citizens to know this is the community you're in. This is so it is braggadocious, but at the same time, you also need to let the people know that this is the type of community you're in, this is the type of people we hire, as people that they're part of the community. That's about it, and it's about continuously using the portal for shout-outs to employees. So it's really just highlighting individual successes, but also it's going to be really marketing now of how do we get that right candidate out there, and making sure that we're using all social medias. We talked about the newsletter that comes out quarterly. That's great, but and every citizen uses that. But the next quarter, a lot of things happen those past 4 months or so. So we had to find ways to continuously push out the information, what's happening with the city, what's happening with the hiring, type of candidates we're looking for, emphasizing that everybody here is for service, so on and so forth. So that is what I have for a great place to work.
I think a lot of that is really good stuff, because places that I and my family have worked before that make a conscious effort to celebrate their people, those people go out and celebrate their place of work publicly. And so I think that lends to, creating a public, view of this is a great place to work.
Is a great comment.
Yeah, and one thing that I really appreciate is our annual awards recognition banquet. I think it says a lot for the employees, and the way that we publicize that on social media and all, it really gets the word out there. So
think about it. Think of in your life for a moment. Has anyone ever received too much legitimate recognition for the good work and contribution that they've made? Too much. Now, we've had some people I've experienced. He said, I've got some illegitimate recognition that I wasn't really proud of, but legitimate recognition for good work, nobody's ever done that. So, I think continuing your effort. You do a wonderful job with the R Spirit and other things there. So, I think continuing to focus that and the management training that you do and those things. Good stuff. Revitalizing.
I got one real quick. So I'm just curious if there's any room here. We've talked about our feedback mechanisms for external customers, but is there room for more often a feedback mechanism on culture. 2 years, I think is what you said, right? It would sound really cool if we could somehow have some sort of weekly pulse check. And who knows if this is possible? This is what we've done at my company. Every week, a survey goes out. They don't have to fill it out, but it gives them 2 questions and then a feedback form they can fill out. Like, they can give us information. And the questions are, what can we do to make your job easier? And what can we do to make your job more enjoyable? Right? Just 2 things, the same questions every week. And then there's actually a net promoter score. So it's, how likely are you to recommend Patriot DSP as a place to work for to your friends, right? So the goal there is like, I think 8, 9, or 10. And if you start dropping, and it provides a quantitative measurement to the health of your culture. And so you can start to see if something's happening in a department, if it starts dipping from an 8 to a 6 over a trend line, right? And so I'm just wondering if there's like a more often way to measure versus 2 years.
You could do it monthly.
Just, I don't know if we want to do it. I'm just throwing it out there.
Yeah,
I like that idea. I think that weekly's too much, but, some type of, feedback mechanism in there that they have.
So I have a client of mine right now that uses a program called Peak On. Peak On is what they call it, but it's Peak On. But it's a communication. And every month they send out 5 questions around the culture, the experience, the working year. So, that is something to consider. There's also something, there's leading indicators and lagging indicators. Lagging indicator, those feedback results, perceptions are lagging indicators. Leading indicators are other things. So, for example, some years ago, we worked with a group and they started looking at what leads to people feeling good about this is a good place to work. Well, it turns out it's the recognition they receive, how much coaching and development, those types of things that they get. And so they started measuring those activities that are leading indicators. And if you start looking at the activity, you start to anticipate what the perception result's going to be down the road. So you could also look at something like that. As an example, Taylor Farms group that I work with in California, one of the things we started doing there was to look at how often have you received feedback from your manager in the last, they do it quarterly, but you could do 30 days. How often have you received feedback? How often, are you getting are you getting the appropriate amount of recognition? By the way, I don't know if it's too high or too low, but if you think it's right, it's right. So, those sort of things to provide some activity focus to lead that. So that's something, Patrick, I'm happy to jump on a call with you and give you some ideas.
I remember at a previous company I worked for, every blue moon when you log in to your computer, even if you're someone on the floor, because you're going to log in, like check your paychecks, things like that, so you're forced to go on a computer, a question would pop up and you had to answer it.
Right.
To get past it. And it's usually like, it was every few weeks, it was like 2 questions like that.
Yeah.
Amazon does that daily with my drivers. Every day they check in, they have to answer like 2 survey questions.
That's
It's
ridiculous.
about me, and I don't get the answer.
All right, let's, good stuff. Let's go to Revitalized Neighborhoods.
Or do we want to go to lunch?
Do we want to go to lunch? Is it ready?
It is.
All right,
and
let's go to
waiting.
lunch. Let's come back in 20 minutes, 30 minutes?
Come back at noon.
Come back at noon?
Yeah.
Perfect.